Welcome back. So in this lesson, we will implement the handlers that we specified in our uh, main or in our routes.go file. So we have show school handler and create school handler that we need to create. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is to create a new file where we will place those handlers. So let me quickly use touch. cmd/API, and the name of the file will be called schools.go. Okay, and so notice that file is right here. Okay, so let's put file name cmd/API/schools.go. Package, of course, will be main, and of course we have a few imports. fmt, net, http, and of course let's use string conv, and finally our HTTP router. Great. Okay, so let's create our first handler. So we're going to use create school handler. So create school handler for the post /version1/schools endpoint. Okay. All right. So again, it will be on the application struct, a method on the application struct. Create school handler. And of course, we need our response writer and our request. Great. So let's just print something when this handler is called. So fmt.println. Okay, we will change this later on, but for now, let's just ensure that it works. So something like create a new school. Okay, that's enough. Let's move on. Let's now create the show handler. Okay, show school handler. Let me just copy this. I don't want to spend time typing all of it. So we're gonna have our show school handler. Okay, and this is for the get schools /ID endpoint. All right. All right. So show school handler, and let's actually implement the code for that. So let's get rid of this. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I want to use the params from context function to get the request context, as of course a slice. So what I'm going to do, since we know that the ID will be specified in the URL, then I need to get that ID. And keep in mind the ID is of course a string. So I'm going to save the context in a variable named params. Okay, so HTTP router dot params from context. Okay, right here. And notice it expects a context. And so we will simply say R from the request and get its context. Okay, great. And so whatever is returned by the R.context, that will be sent to params from context, and of course it will return a params. Okay, all right, great. So what I want to do now, I want to get the ID field from this params variable. Okay, so let's get the value of the ID parameter. Okay, and so to get that, all I need to do is to call str string convert. Okay, since we have to convert from string to an int, and I'm going to say parse int. Okay, and what I'm going to pass in, of course, is params by name. I'm going to give it ID. Okay, so it's going to simply look for the ID within the params variable, and it will return the associated value. So ID is like the key, and whatever is returned is the value. So of course, whenever we use a parse int, we need to specify the base. So base 10, right? And the precision, well, 64 bits. And that should be enough. Let's just check for errors. All right, so obviously we need to check for an error. So if error not equal to nil, and also if the ID that is returned is less than 1, then we know that it's an invalid value, or there is some error, and so we'll just say that we could not process this. So let's just use not found. Okay. Oops. Or okay. So if ID is not equals to nil or ID less than 1, then I'm going to return back the not found message. Of course, I need to pass in W, I need to pass in R. Right? It's telling me that. Okay. And then of course I need to return so that I can exit the handler at that point. Now, if there are no errors, then it means we will end up at this point here on line 28. And here we will simply display the school ID for now. Okay, so fmt dot print f. All right, we'll pass in W, and of course we're going to have a formatted string. So show the details for school modulus d backslash n. Okay, and of course that will be ID. Let's close my handler. Okay. Oops. That's right. Oops. F.F. Good. Okay, so that is my handler. Looks about right. So if we come back and we check routes that go, we should no longer see any error message. So let's we've saved it. Let's open a terminal and let's see if this actually works. Okay, so it's telling me okay, so just to go more tidy. Okay, Control L. Okay, so let me open a term. Let me start the server. So go run that /cmd /API. Okay, so our server is running on port 4000. Okay, so let me open a new terminal and let us test um, this these endpoints. So we're going to use curl. Okay, and so let's start off the basics. Local host. Okay, colon 4000. Let's check the health check just to make sure it still works. Great, still works. Now let's try the schools endpoint. So we're gonna use post. Okay, so -x post, and then we're gonna say local host colon 4000 v1 / schools. Okay, so we end up with, it's interesting, we end up with nothing. Let's make sure that my schools is correct. Okay. Oh, okay. See the problem right here. F printf. That's the problem. All right. So F printf. So let me go back to my terminal. Yeah. Control C, Control L, and let me restart. Okay. So health check still works. And let's try running schools again. Okay, great. So we get back a response. Let's try using the ID. So let's get rid of this post. And so we will say schools / and provide an ID. Let's say 7. Okay, and show the details for school 7. Remember, that's a get. This is a get request, get method. If I say -1, then 404 page not found, because let's try 0. Okay, great. So that's working. Let's move on and let's check. Let's do health check again, but this time let's say I want to do a post. Let's see if we can post to health check. All right. So let's do -i, and then let's do -x, and let's do a post. Okay. All right. So notice the header information. Okay, that is returned. All right. 405 is telling me method not allowed. Notice it's telling me you're only allowed to do a get or options, content type, date, and so on. And the method not allowed. Okay. So if we put a capital I, okay, we get the header information. Okay, let's try the dash. Let's try the options option. Okay, so remove post and let's use options. So options will basically tell me what is allowed. Okay, what is allowed. And so notice it's telling me, notice it's now okay, right? Because it's valid. And it's telling me I can use get or I can use options. Those are the only two things that this endpoint accepts. All right. Great. And what would happen if, let's try our this endpoint again, but let's put a characters, let's say UB. All right, of course we should get 404 page not found. Okay, so good so far. Our endpoints are working, even though they are just, we just put temporary code into them. All right. Later on we're gonna change this, and one thing we can do, we will be doing a lot of getting the IDs, right? Because we have a lot of endpoints that we'll develop where we have to grab the ID. So later on, we will refactor this and move all of this where we actually get the context, get the ID from the context, parse it, and then check to see if it's not nil or less than 1. Otherwise, use it. All of this can be put into its own function that we could call. So in the next lesson, we will go ahead and we will refactor that functionality out, and then make the change to our code. But for now, everything works. So let me do a commit. So git status. Okay, we have a bunch of things we haven't committed. So let's just git add. Okay, and then git commit, and our message will be added the create school handler and the show school handler. Okay, seems good enough. All right, and then let me proceed to do a, well, I think yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So git push origin master. Okay, so I'm pushing this up to GitHub. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I guess I'll save that for the next lesson. All right. So in the next lesson, I'll do the push after I have refactored. I'll see you in that next lesson.